At the center of Heroic stood the bell tower. Stone. Narrow. Cracked down the spine like an old tooth. Abandoned. The townsfolk said the rope was cut after the fire in 1891. Said the bell had rung only once since then. And that was the night Eleanor Griggs vanished. No one went near it now. Not even the crows. But on the first frost of every November, just after midnight, it rang. 4 chimes. Low. Hollow. Distant. Like sound leaking from the bottom of a grave. And always at the same hour. 12:17 a.m. No one knew why. No one asked. Except for Clara Bellamy. Clara had moved back after her father's death. Inherited the old cottage on Moss Hollow Lane. She didn't believe in heroic stories. Not the Fogwives. Not the black dogs. And certainly not the tower bell that rang itself. But when it tolled on her first night in town, she woke in bed. Heart pounding. Ears ringing. No dreams. Just a whisper, faint and not her own. Count the 4th. The next day, she asked the postmaster about the tower. Old Harris just shook his head. "We leave it be," he muttered. "Let the stone forget." When she pressed further, he grew pale. "No one pulls that rope, Miss Bellamy. That bell rings for itself. And every time it does, something old stirs. Something we promised not to remember." Clara didn't believe him. Not then. But that night, the bell rang again. 4 chimes. And this time, she was already awake. Sitting in the dark. Listening. And when the final note faded, she heard something else. A 5th chime. Soft. Uneven. Not from the tower. From inside her cottage. She followed the sound to the attic. Dust thick. Air still. In the far corner. A trunk. Her father's. She opened it. Only one thing inside. A cracked, rusted handbell. Still vibrating. Beneath it, a note in her father's handwriting. "When it rings alone, don't answer the door. If you must, never look down the stairs." The handbell was warm. Clara stared at it in the candlelight. No wind. No string. No reason it should ring. But still, it hummed faintly in her hand, as if something on the other end had just let go. She read the note again. "When it rings alone, don't answer the door. If you must, never look down the stairs." She wasn't sure which part disturbed her more, the warning, or the fact that her father, sane, rational, kind, had written it at all. She didn't sleep. The bell sat beside her bed, silent now. But the moment the clock struck 12:17, the tower rang again. 4 chimes. Measured. Cold. Each one slower than the last. Then silence. Then tap, tap, tap. At the door. She froze. Not footsteps. Not knocking. Just 3 faint taps. Like fingernails. Or bone. She stood in the dark, heart rattling. Didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't open. Then, a voice. Old. Wet. Smiling without teeth. "Wrong house," it rasped. "Wrong name. She's not here anymore." Clara didn't breathe. The voice moved away. Soft footsteps through frost. She peeked through the curtain. The path was empty. But the handbell on her table was gone. The next day, she returned to the tower. Moss on the stones. Door sealed shut with rusted chains. But someone had scratched something new into the wood, right across the center plank. 1 chime is for listening. 2 is for remembering. 3 is for returning. 4 is for her. 5 is for you. That night, she stayed up again, notebook in hand, waiting. 12:17. 4 chimes. No knock. But when she turned her head, the handbell was back, sitting on the dresser, cracked, cold, watching, and beside it, another note, not her father's, in a different hand, pressed in dust. Only 2 words, "Come alone." Clara stared at the new note. No envelope, no crease, just dust around the edges, like it had been there long before she arrived. Come alone. She burned it, but the ash didn't scatter. It curled into itself, twisted, and reformed into the shape of a bell. She went to the library the next morning, not to search records, but people. Someone had to know more. The town's archivist, Marin Voss, greeted her with a knowing look. Before Clara could ask a question, Marin spoke first. "You heard the 5th. Clara blinked. "How do you?" "They always hear the 5th before they vanish." Marin pulled a dusty register from beneath the desk. Inside, names, dates, a single word stamped beside several of them. Rung. "Each time the bell rings without a hand," Marin explained, "someone gets marked." Clara flipped to the last page. Her name wasn't there. Yet, that night, she dreamed of the tower. No fog, no cold, just her, inside it, standing beneath the bell, looking up. Something was carved inside the bell's dome, but she couldn't read it, because it began to open, not split, open, like a mouth. She woke gasping. The room was cold, not the kind of cold that comes from open windows, the kind that follows something in, and from the hall. Footsteps, slow, steady, coming down the stairs this time. She gripped the bell in her hand. No sound. She remembered the warning. Never look down the stairs. So she didn't. Instead, she stepped backward, into her room, closed the door, held her breath. But the footsteps stopped right outside, and a man's voice, calm, polite, too steady, spoke from the other side. "It's rude not to answer when the bell rings." She heard it once and came. "You heard it twice. And now, it's your turn to ring it back." She whispered through the door. "Who are you?" The man paused, then softly replied, "The one who answers when you don't." The next morning, the door was open. Nothing inside but the smell of old stone and smoke. The bell sat in the middle of the floor. This time, it had a crack down its side, and her initials carved at the base. The bell should not have had writing, not on its base, not in her father's house, not with her initials carved in the metal. But there it sat, cracked clean down one side, and at the bottom, in letters that looked more scorched than etched, C.B. Clara Bellamy. She brought it to the woods, buried it, 3 feet deep, near the old well. She didn't tell anyone, didn't sleep, didn't wait. But at 12:17 a.m., the tower rang anyway. 4 chimes, then silence, then a 5th, muffled, as if from underground. The next morning, the bell was back, clean, whole, and wet. Clara didn't touch it, just stared, because something had changed. The clapper, The piece that makes it ring was missing, and inside the hollow was something else entirely. A strip of flesh. Gray. Coiled. Still twitching. She ran to the tower. Chained, locked, overgrown, unchanged from the outside. But there were footprints in the frost now. Bare. Small. Leading from the tower to her house. She confronted Marin. Demanded the truth. He poured tea. Lit a candle. Sat down slowly. Before the fire, the bell was used to call the town to prayer, he began. But not for God. Not really. It was a name. A call. A bargain. And when they stopped ringing it, when they cut the rope, something still listened. It just started ringing back. Clara asked what it wanted. Marin wouldn't say. He only pointed to the ledger again. More names had been stamped since yesterday, and one of them, fresh, still wet, was her father's. Rung. That night, Clara stayed outside. No candles. No fire. Just her and the night. When the clock neared 12:17, she held a new bell in her lap. One she bought from a shop in the next town. A test. The tower bell rang. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then, nothing. No fifth chime. But the bell in her lap shook. Just once. No sound. Just motion. And inside it, a new clapper. Still red. Still pulsing. But this time, it was a human tongue. Clara didn't scream. She didn't flinch. Didn't drop the bell. She simply stared at the tongue inside it, still wet, still twitching, and realized something else. It wasn't just any tongue. It had a scar. A thin, clean cut across the center. The same scar her father bore. The one he got during a surgery when Clara was 8. She brought the bell inside, wrapped it in cloth, buried it in salt, left it in the shed. But that night, the shed door swung open. No wind, no sound, just a whisper that slithered across the floorboards. He rang for her, and now she rings for you. The next day, she returned to the tower, but the chains were gone, the door ajar, and inside, no stairs, no dust, only a spiral drop into darkness, as if the tower had hollowed itself out, waiting. She heard the bell then, not from above, from below, just one toll, heavy, wet, and in its echo, a voice, not spoken aloud, not heard with ears, but felt. She was faithful. He broke the vow. Now the bell must feed. Clara staggered back. The tower was quiet again, but on the ground at her feet, half buried in moss, was another note, written in her father's hand. I took her name to save you, but names ring forever. Don't speak yours aloud. Not in that place. Not after midnight. That evening, Clara didn't light a lamp, didn't boil tea. She sat in silence, listening to the wind slip beneath the eaves. When 12:17 came, the tower rang. 1, 2, 3, 4, and again. Silence. But this time, no fifth chime. Only a whisper outside the window. A child's voice. Clara. She turned. Nothing. Then, Clara Bellamy. From behind her, she spun. Empty room. Empty air. But on the table, the handbell, now filled with her own voice, echoing softly from within. I'm here. I'm here. I'm here. The voice in the bell wouldn't stop. I'm here. I'm here. I'm here. Soft, muffled, and hers. Not a recording. Not an echo. A memory. Each time the bell whispered, Clara felt the moment it came from. Her 5-year-old self, lost in the fog behind the churchyard, calling out for her father. Only now, the words no longer called for him. They called for something else. She placed the bell under a glass jar, wrapped the jar in rope, tied it shut. Still, it whispered, I'm here. I'm here. But now the voice was older. Not 5. Not present. Not alive. She took the bell to Marin. He didn't open the jar. Didn't touch it. Just stared, pale as ash. They have your name now, he said quietly. And once the bell speaks it, it belongs to the tower. You don't lose your soul, Clara. You lose your return. She asked him what that meant. Marin lit a candle, held his own hand over the flame until the skin cracked. It means if the bell rings your name in full, he said, you'll never come back. Not in body, not in memory, not in voice. You'll be wrung out. That night, Clara dreamed of the well near the woods. It was sealed shut, but in the dream, she heard something under the stones. Chimes, quick, uneven, counting backward. 4, 3, 2, 1. Then silence. Then a whisper, not from the dream, but from her own mouth. Clara Bellamy. She woke up choking. The bell jar had shattered. The rope was still wrapped tight, but the bell had cracked clean down the middle. Inside, instead of the tongue, a tooth. One of her own. From years ago. She remembered losing it during a fall. Blood in the sink. Father holding her, worried. She never found the tooth. Until now. Then the chimes rang again. 12:17. 4 from the tower. But this time, there was a 5th. Clear. Sharp. From her kitchen drawer. She followed the sound. Opened the drawer slowly. And inside, a bell. Tiny. Brass. Familiar. Her childhood toy. One she hadn't seen since the fire. It rang again. Clara Bellamy, it said. The bell remembers. The toy bell rang one final time. Clara Bellamy. Then fell silent. Its clapper crumbled to ash. Its rim split in two. She didn't scream. Didn't cry. She just whispered, "What do you want from me?" But the house gave no answer. Only the low groan of old wood settling, or rising. The next day, Clara returned to the well. The one behind the trees. The one sealed with a rusted lid and 4 stone slabs. She remembered it now. Not from dreams. Not from whispers. From before. Before the fire. Before her father stopped praying. Before the bells ever rang. She brought rope. A lantern. A crowbar. When she pried the stones loose, they bled moss and fog. The lid beneath was older than she expected. Iron-stamped, etched with 7 concentric circles. Each one smaller, tighter, like a ripple closing in. She lifted the lid. Nothing beneath but a stone shaft. And stairs. Worn smooth. Descending into darkness. Not a well at all. A staircase. And somewhere far below, a chime. Faint. Regular. Waiting. She climbed down, step by step. The air grew cold, then wet, then still. She counted the stairs. 17, 30, 42. At the 53rd step she saw it. A door. Stone. Circular. Carved with her initials. She reached out. Didn't knock. Didn't speak. But the door opened anyway. Inside, a room no wider than a grave. At the far wall, a table, a single bell, no rope, no clapper, just a basin beside it filled with water, floating in the water. A face, her own, still, pale, eyes closed. She stepped forward, looked closer. The bell whispered, not in her ears, in her bones. 1 chime to listen, 2 to remember, 3 to return, 4 to summon, 5 to choose. On the table beside the basin, 2 names etched into copper. Eleanor Griggs, Clara Bellamy. One was already crossed out. Clara reached toward the bell. It was cold, and beneath her fingers, the surface moved, like skin. She didn't ring it, but it rang for her. The bell rang once. Not loud, not bright, not sharp. It rang like breath, like the last thing a dying man whispers through a mouth full of dust. And when it rang, the face in the basin opened its eyes. Not blinking, not startled, just awake. Clara stumbled back, but the room did not change. No shadows shifted, no wind howled. Only the ripples moved, spreading from the basin, from the face, from the bell. And in those ripples, something began to rise. Not a figure, a memory. Her father, younger, smiling, holding a different bell. Silver, thin-necked, with a chipped rim. He rang it once, then spoke to her, not aloud, not to her body, to her name. This keeps it fed, Clara. This keeps it away, but only for a while. One day it will ask again. The room trembled. The copper plates on the table glowed faintly. Her name pulsed. Eleanor's did not. The choice was clear. But Clara understood too late. This was never her choice. It had already been made. The bell rang twice more. The basin boiled. The reflection vanished. And in its place, a bell clapper, still dripping, made not of metal, but of tongue. Her tongue. She turned to flee, but there were no stairs, no door, no path back, only the bell, waiting, expecting. She tried not to speak, tried not to breathe, but deep in her chest, something moved, a tremble, a vibration, the beginning of a sound, and before she could stop it, Clara Bellamy, her name, spoken aloud, by her, by it, the bell screamed, the room shattered into pitch, and far above, in the tower, the 5th chime rang once more, louder, deeper, final. In Heroic, the townsfolk woke, birds fell silent, mirrors cracked, and on the side of the bell tower, burned into the wood like a scar, a new name appeared beneath the others, Clara Bellamy, rung. The next morning, the fog never lifted. Heroic awoke under a sky that didn't brighten, beneath clouds that hung too low, as though the bell tower's shadow had spread across the sun itself. And in Clara's cottage, nothing, no footprints, no signs of struggle, only the handbell on the table, cracked and quiet, and a chair, still warm. Marin Voss stood at the edge of the well. The stones had resealed themselves. No lid, no sign of the door, no sound from below. But he knew what it meant when the name was burned into the tower, knew what came next, because Heroic always remembered its bargains. That afternoon, he opened the archive, turned to the last page of the ledger. The ink was still wet beside Clara's name. Rung. He turned the page. The next one was blank, except for a title scrawled at the top in a hand he didn't recognize. The next bell. That night, 12:17 arrived without warning. The town held its breath. The tower rang. One chime. 2, 3, 4. But this time, there was no fifth. Instead, 6. No one moved. No one spoke. Because 6 was never part of the order. The rhythm had been broken. And once broken, it could never be trusted again. Marin heard the 6th chime in his bones, felt it behind his eyes, and in that moment he understood. The bell no longer waited for names. It no longer marked the chosen. Now it simply called, and all who heard it belonged. Across town, windows trembled, soil cracked, mirrors bled, and beneath every doorstep, beneath every cellar stair, beneath every crib, cupboard, and bed, a second sound followed the 6th chime. A knock. In every home. At the same time. 3 times. Tap, tap, tap. Not all opened their doors. But those who did saw no one, heard nothing, only found a bell, waiting, and in each bell, a name, none their own, until the last bell, the one on Marin's porch. Inside it, Marin Voss. Marin did not bring the bell inside. He didn't touch it, didn't speak, didn't even breathe too close. But it knew he had seen it. That was enough. It rang. Once. The sound passed through the walls of his cottage, into the bones of the foundation, through the trees beyond Heroic, and down, into the stone below the tower. There, in the dark, the basin stirred again. But this time, no face rose. Only echoes. Dozens. Hundreds. All names. Names the bell had taken. Names it still remembered. Names that could no longer be forgotten. Marin opened the ledger one last time. Every page was full now. Not written in ink, but scored into the parchment. Clara's name glowed faintly at the bottom. Below it, a final line. Not a name. A sentence. The last to ring must listen. He lit no candle that night. He left his door open, and sat with the bell between his palms. When the tower rang, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Marin did not flinch. When the knock came, tap, 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 he answered. There was no one there, only fog, and a path, not paved, not worn, made of bone and moss. It led not away from the village, but down. He followed it, past the churchyard, past the old stones, past the grave that never bore a name. At the base of the bell tower, a door waited, new, wood still wet, and carved across it. All that rings must return. He stepped through, found only one thing inside, a rope, frayed, knotted, old, and at the top, lost in the dark of the rafters. The original bell, the one that had never stopped listening. He took hold of the rope. It moved in his hand, not by force, not by wind, but by recognition. And as he pulled, the bell above began to toll. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7. No one in Heroic heard the seventh chime. They were already asleep, or dreaming, or gone. But the seventh echoed somewhere deeper, where names are no longer spoken, only rung. The tower never rang again. The bell cracked, split, and crumbled to dust. The ledger vanished, and the path beneath the earth sealed itself once more. They say the fog in Heroic never lifted after that the sun still tries, but always stops short. And if you walk too close to the tower, sometimes, just sometimes, you'll hear a sound, not a bell, a voice, yours, whispering from far, far below. I'm here, I'm here, I'm here.